When you beat yourself up, you literally take yourself 5 steps back. Every time you can come up with something negative about yourself, I'm too fat, I'm this, they don't like black people, they blah, blah, blah. All you do is, okay, great, 5 steps back, 10 steps back. That's all you do. I say show up. Continue to show up. What's the old axiom, like 95% of success is showing up?
Financial independence.
Freedom.
Financial picture.
Independent financially.
Financial future.
Financial freedom and wealth.
Financial independence.
Get your fill. Financial independence and long life. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Get Your Fill, the podcast, the experience, the place to be if you want more money, more options, and more fun. And that's why we have the most fun, cool person. I've talked to her for like 3 minutes, and I already tell you that you're going to love Tracy Christian. She is fun. She's funny. She's smart. She's witty. And she's an entrepreneur. She knows how to make, what's the word? Make chicken salad out of chicken poop, right?
Make it rain. I know how to make it rain.
Exactly. She not only is Tracy Christian a veteran talent agent with more than 25 years in the entertainment industry, which, as you may or may not know, is not really dominated by Black women, surprisingly. Go figure, which it obviously should be. And she's been named one of the top Black female executives by Forbes and Hollywood Reporter, Essence, and Black Enterprise, which, is kind of a list. And then all kinds of other stuff, which we're going to put into the show notes. But the other thing that is important for you to know about her is that during the pandemic, she totally pivoted and said, okay, well, not a ton of people are needing to do talent placement right now, since nobody can be in the same room with each other. So she said, well, what else can I do? So after years of having difficulty finding clothes that accommodated her lifestyle, she started Sante Grace, which is an upscale plus size clothing line. She's the founder, she's the head designer, and that line has been featured in multiple fashion magazines and blogs like Fashion Bomb Daily, Who, What, Where, Refinery 29, and Time Magazine. Holy moly, I feel like really excited and honored and happy that you're here with me today. And so should you, listeners, because this is going to be really epic. Welcome.
Thank you. After that introduction, I hope I'm not a disappointment.
Okay, yeah, so just some random person in her house that we're going to chat with, right? So not a lot of people get to, are in the situation where like, oh, I go shopping and I just can't find anything that really works for me. So I'm going to just start a clothing line. How did that come about?
So I have always been that girl who was kind of other. I was probably, 5'7" in the 6th grade. So it was always hard for my mom to shop for me. And that didn't change when I grew up. You know, when you are in the entertainment industry, specifically being an agent, from day one when you're an assistant, you're expected to wear a suit, right? Or get to dress like that. And you're definitely making minimum wage. So and they built it that way specifically, and it was to keep certain groups out. So if you didn't have family money, how do you even dress the part? Right. And if you can't dress the part, how do you get into the spaces you need to go? Because we all know presentation matters.
Right.
So I always wanted to do a clothing line. I thought there was a real white space in the plus size market. But if you're as old as me, you see I have a lot of gray wisdom here. When I thought
Hard-earned.
about Yes, when I thought about a clothing line, websites, only big companies had websites, and they cost, $25,000 to set up, and was really difficult. Like e-commerce wasn't a thing yet. And then as that kind of grew, I was busy earning a living as an agent. But the pandemic was an opportunity for us all to stop. And I thought, if I come out of the pandemic the same person that I went in, that's a problem. What can I do? And then I remember at 3 o'clock in the morning, like a voice said to me, start your clothing line. So that's what I did.
Awesome. It's funny because people sometimes say to me, well, why did you do this? And how did you do this? I'm like, well, I had this little voice in my head.
Right?
Okay, so you're a crazy person. Great. Well, happy to meet a fellow crazy person, right?
Wow.
I think you're crazy if you don't listen to those voices.
I think that's what life is about,
Yeah,
right? It's
absolutely.
like Eureka. People expect Eureka to be like this lightning bolt and whatever. And it's really more like Eureka.
Exactly. Those still small voice
Yes.
that you have to be quiet to hear. Absolutely. That's fabulous. And I guess it feels a little daunting still to launch such a big project in a time when, although in some cases, because people were just home on their
Mhm.
computers all day. So, but did you find it? Did you have already made connections? Did you feel like you had a little bit of an advantage from did being an agent help you with the clothing line at all?
Can I tell you, like, I want to be totally transparent because I want our discussion to really help, people who tune in.
Thank you.
To me, the most daunting thing that you can ever do is to be a parent. Like, you're responsible for a living, breathing human being. It expects to eat 3 times a day and to wear clothes, and it had its own opinion and all of that. So everything else that we do in life is underneath that. Now, I say that, like, I don't have kids, but sometimes I think to myself, like, when I'm going to do something that seems scary to me or whatever, I do compare, like, I don't have to do that, right? I
I have to push an 8-pound person out of my body.
Right, right. I don't have to help someone navigate their lives.
Right?
I don't have to be right. And when you have a kid, you're never not responsible for that kid,
Right.
right? I'm a
Right.
100 years old, and my mother still treats me like she still assumes that I'm not eating right, that I'm this, right? So you never get to abdicate the responsibility.
Right.
I'm only starting a business. I can
Right.
end it at any time I choose. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's my method.
I like it. I like it. So all you people, if you've whether or not you've had a kid, just like do whatever it is that's scaring you. Just suck it up and do it because, right? It's a lot easier than being responsible for another human being who you don't want to end up, in some back
For
alley
the
gutter
rest of your
somewhere, right?
life.
In
Literally,
some dumpster.
there's no retirement from being a parent,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
The first time I bought a piece of real estate, I was very nervous and I didn't know what I didn't know. And what if I don't, what if I do something wrong and the tax get me and all of this stuff. And I thought to myself, I, yeah, I can always sell it.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll lose it. I won't be the first person or the last person,
Yeah.
right? Like I'll find a way to navigate it. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
So
I actually say that to myself sometimes. If every problem you have can be solved by money, you don't have any problems.
you don't have a problem. Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
because, like health, your
Help.
kid's in trouble, something like
Yep.
that, that not necessarily money's going to help you with that. But
Right.
if like you just don't quite have enough, that's not really a problem.
Right.
It's an inconvenience, right? It's a
Yes.
bump in the road.
Yes. Yes.
So tell me more about on your real estate career.
I bought my first piece of real estate at 25,
Awesome.
and I bought it for a lot of reasons. But the biggest reason, again, I'm gonna be totally transparent, was my boyfriend. I was dating this like good looking, high fly, bright lights, bright city attorney, and he just bought a house in Southern California for about $1 million. And I was living in a like, you know, nice enough apartment in Hollywood, but nothing to compete with what he was buying. And I thought, oh my God, this guy is not going to want to, be involved with me. I'm living, like, compared to him, I'm living in a roach motel. Like, I got to get my game up,
Right?
right? I got to get my game up. And so I thought, well, he's buying property. I'm going to buy some property. But I wasn't an attorney. I wasn't being guaranteed hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. Okay, so I had to figure it out. Okay, well, all right, so how do I get some money to buy something? So I knew I had to buy something that would generate its own income, right? So that meant apartment building.
Yeah.
So I looked into it, and again, this is before Google. I would go to Barnes and Noble, and I would go to the real estate section, which, everybody apparently has written a book about real estate. And I would thumb through the books. If it looked like it was at my grade level and interesting, then I would just sit there on the floor and read the book
Cool.
because I couldn't afford to, spend $500 in real estate books. So I just sit there on the floor and I'd read for, now bookstores barely exist any longer, but they would let you sit there and read for 3 or 4 hours.
Yep.
And sometimes I would finish the book and I'd say, okay, well, this one is only $10. I'll go ahead. This one seemed really good. I'll buy this. And I just read the other six. But I realized, okay, I need to buy something with, some units, and I can't buy something that's too big because the laws are different. That'll be considered a commercial property. And so I learned all of that from Barnes and Noble. And I knew the area I wanted to, live in and buy and invest in. So I got a realtor like everybody does. And my realtor said, oh, you want to live like, that area barely has apartments, and they definitely don't have apartments in your budget, Tracy. Let me show you something else. So there are these things called the MLSs, and they weren't computerized in those days,
Right. That's right.
right? So I said, okay, all the things that you're showing me don't make sense or not what I asked for. Do you mind if I come into your office and I'll just look at the MLSs myself? He said, sure. So I'd driven enough around that area that I kind of knew the streets pretty well. And I saw something come on the MLSs, and it was, a fourplex in the area that I wanted to buy. And, the price looked, what I had done the numbers, I knew what price I wanted. And but I knew from knowing the streets that, okay, this is something. And I said, we got to move. And we put in an offer. It was a foreclosure, and I won it. And that's how I bought my first piece of real estate.
By being smart, by being honest about what you didn't know, by learning, by educating yourself, right? I mean, that's all it is. That's what that's success, right?
That's
Napoleon Hill, right?
success.
Organized planning. We're going to do some, we're going to fill in the gaps. We're going to be persistent. We're going to not take any
Yeah.
crap from our real estate professional who, thinks they know a lot of stuff. I remember one of the houses I bought, the agent was actually laughing. And I had already decided when we walked in there, I already decided I was going to buy the place. And she's making fun of it as we walk around. And I thought to myself, you're not very good at this, are you?
No. So, okay, I'm glad you said that because I think we hold professionals in very high regard, but don't be afraid to go against the grain, right? Like they step into the matrix with their preconceived notions, and sometimes being naive is not a bad thing.
Right. Yeah, you're right. Well, and that's a good point on a lot of levels because you can be like one thing being naive, you don't be afraid to ask any single question that you don't understand. Don't think, "Oh, everybody else must know this. I'm just going to fake it." Right? Just ask everything you need to ask. But also, don't assume that that person's goals are the same as your goals,
Right.
right? I mean,
Right.
I didn't ask her how many pieces of investment property she has, but I suspect that she probably didn't have any. Because if she couldn't look at that property and see that it had potential,
And
then I'm
see what you
thinking,
saw.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Or
Yes.
if, yeah, and there again, if she couldn't look at me and figure out that I'm a scrappy, SOB, and then I'm gonna
That's the other thing. That was so interesting to me because if again, I'm not a real estate agent, but if I made a transaction with someone, they would get at minimum a call, email, or whatever from me once a year. Like I'm not, if someone invested in property once, chances are they're going to do it again. And even if they're not thinking of it, I'm going to put the idea in their head. Hey, are you paying attention to interest rates? Like here's what you could do. You could pull some money out of that building and buy something else, and you really should, right? It's too hard to get a new client.
Right.
I wouldn't let that client float away from me.
Yeah. That's how I got started because I am a real estate agent, real estate broker now. And I started off with rentals because I didn't why did I do that? Well, partly because the market was really horrible when I started.
Mhm.
It was in 2008 and it was, everything was short sales and foreclosures, and at that time, I didn't know how to get started with that whole thing, but also because probably confidence, right? You wanna walk around with people who wanna buy a multi-million dollar home. You gotta feel comfortable that you can walk in that circle, that you can be with those people. So I started off in rentals and I kept in touch with everybody that rented an apartment to. And some people ended up buying a house and they bought one a lot of times with me because they knew me, they trusted me. We'd already been driving around looking at apartments together and they knew that I listened to them, whatever reason, we had complimentary whatever auras or something. But that never would have happened. I've actually had people who are selling their house and they obviously bought it with somebody else because I didn't help them buy it. And I'll say, what, why, why didn't you, or is there a reason that you didn't use the person who sold you the property? And sometimes they'll be like, oh, I don't know how to get in touch with them. I can't even remember their name. I don't, right. And that's 100% on them, right?
That's crazy
That's
to me.
100% on that agent. They just lost whatever it was that I made
Yeah,
on that commission because
they
they
just
just
lost that listing.
couldn't be bothered to send a Christmas card. I mean,
A
come on.
Christmas, and nowadays you don't even have to like put a stamp on an envelope.
Right.
It's an email. It's an email. I would be every week. I would have a newsletter that Chat GPT generated, and they'd get a thing from me.
Yeah.
Like one of my best friends, we met at the dog park. Get this, we met at the dog park. So we're sitting there with our dog. Our dogs are playing, and she said to me, that she just got an inheritance. And I was like, oh, that's great, amazing. She's an artist. She was an artist. Didn't even
Cool.
have a full-time job. I said, well, what are you going to do with the money? And she said, I don't know. I'll put it in the bank. And I said, you
I'll
should
just,
but I said, she's an artist, right? I
yeah,
said,
right.
you should buy something. Like, just imagine if you bought a triplex, you could live in one of the units and rent out the others, and it'll give you like a little bit of income. Okay. So she's not a stupid girl. That made sense to her.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what she did. She went and she was living with her parents. She bought a triplex. And then she pulled money out of the triplex and she bought a single family home with a unit. And then she got married and had a kid, and they pulled money out of that building, and now they have like very
Yep.
nice house, great
Yep.
neighborhood. But imagine if her realtor had just said like, oh, this flaky girl with purple hair, she's never gonna, amount to anything.
Yep.
Yeah,
That realtor would have lost 3 transactions and a good
three
amount of money.
transactions in the Los Angeles market, and these buildings that she's buying are not cheap.
Yeah.
She has over $10 million in real estate.
Awesome. I love that. I love hearing those stories, and it's all because she had a dog and was smart enough to run it at the same time that you were there.
Right? But she did it all her own as a single woman
Yeah.
who didn't have a job. She didn't have a right. So all the things
Yeah.
that you hear about, oh, you've got to save this amount of money and you got to this and that, not true.
You just need a clue and a smart friend and
You need it.
the
And she's a person that asks a lot of questions. Like you said, she
Yep.
has a lot of questions and she looks for the yes. Like, don't tell me why this isn't going to work. Tell me how we make it work.
Right. Right. Perfect. So, tell me more about how your real estate career has advanced because, I have a soft spot for real estate.
Right now it's funny. Well, I have such a great mortgage. I refinanced. I'm never gonna touch that loan. But now that's the depressing part. That's the depressing part. But I bought a building, and because it was a foreclosure, lots of times when you buy foreclosures, they haven't updated anything in years. And that was exactly the case for my building. It was the worst building on the best block, and I was an assistant when I bought that building. So I was making whatever minimum wage was, that's what I was making. And my building hadn't been repiped. It was constructed in 1927. It needed repipe, it needed a rewire, it needed a roof, termiting, some concrete work, everything that you could kind of think of.
Wow.
And I had a pretty specific business plan that had to work for my life. So, one, I rented to people who were kind of left of center, who had a hard time getting apartments. And I would say to them, hey, look, I'm not going to raise your rent, but I don't want calls in the middle of the night that, this faucet needs a washer and this. I expect you to take care of all of that. And here's a list of contractors. You're not allowed to have your brother come in and fix this or whatever. You got to use this list of contractors. If there's something that it could hurt the building, by all means, call me, right? Like you plug something in and you see sparks,
Okay.
I'll take care of that. But for everything else, that's going to be your responsibility. And in exchange for having a 750 square foot, one bedroom apartment in a great neighborhood and a garage and a this and a that, your rent's only going to be 695,
Wow.
right? And they would be like, okay, this is the last you'll ever see me. You'll never hear from me again. And it's true. So one guy that's in that building, he's been there, it's literally since the day I bought the building. And I think I've raised his rent. So he's been there almost 30 years. I think I've raised his rent 5 times. So he's got the deal of a century.
Right? And he knows it,
And he
obviously.
knows it. And he knows it. And so he takes out the cans. He does every,
Yeah,
right. He doesn't want to be on anybody's bad side. He knows he's got a great deal. And
yeah,
so I have tremendous tenants. But now that, over the years, every time I got a little, got a good tax refund or something, $5,000, okay, great, I'll termite the building. Oh, great, I'll do this. Oh, great, this person's been a great tenant. Great, they'll get a new refrigerator. I would do things like that. And
yeah.
now, everything in the building is up to code. And I want to be a slum landlord. I want to raise the rent no. But, I knew that's the kind of relationship that I wanted. I didn't want I wasn't trying to, like, what's the top of the range of rent? Because I knew those people were going to expect me to be, Johnny on the spot with repairs, and I couldn't afford to do that.
Right.
So I kind of leveraged my clients or my tenants' income to build up the building.
Fabulous. And see, that's smart because you said, I know what my assets are. I know what my liabilities are. And how can I make this work for everybody? It's a just giant win-win. And it worked out perfectly.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So I feel like all of the stories that we could talk about with you are going to just highlight your essential qualities, right? But let's test my theory and tell me about getting into the agent world, becoming an agent in a world that is not friendly, not even friendly to women, right? Particularly not friendly to Black women. Like not like it's the old boy network, right? There's no casting couch. Do you have, oh, let me ask you that. Do you like when you get like a good looking actor or actress, you like put them on the casting couch and say, okay.
So gross. No. Like women, we just run businesses differently. Like it wouldn't even occur to me to do something like that. When I sign, I'm thinking of one client that we have, I won't use his name, but he's gorgeous, right? Gorgeous. All I can think to do is like introduce him to somebody else who's going to pay for him. I don't want to. Like you take him. Don't you?
You
It's
look
like
high
I'm selling.
maintenance. No, thank you.
Right, like I'm selling Aston Martins. Like here. No, no. I don't think about couching anybody. But no, this industry is a trip. The way I became an agent was I had another business. And while I was in college, I worked and put myself through college, and I was friends with a director who's since passed on, named John Singleton, and he was really hot then because he'd done Boys in the Hood, and my best friend was kind of his best friend, so we were all palling around, and I said, "Look, I gotta graduating soon. I gotta get a job. What do you guys think I would be good at? I don't know what I want to do." My degree is in Greco-Roman history. You
Wow,
know,
that's handy.
exactly. That's what my parents said. They were like, you couldn't go to like junior college and study that. You had to go to 4 year school. Okay, great. Um, and I didn't want to teach and I didn't want to be an attorney, all the things that you think might serve that degree. Anyway, so John said to me, I think you should either be a madam or an agent.
Why'd you choose agent?
Exactly, right? Because I look so good in jail. So, and I'm wearing a jumpsuit right now that if it were orange, I guess it could be a perfect jumpsuit. But so, okay, so I said, okay, I choose agent. And John very generously got me a meeting with his agency, which was CAA at the time. And CAA didn't even have Black janitors, okay? They had this one African American female agent who I interviewed with to be her assistant. And I could tell that she had a pretty bad coke problem.
Oh boy.
And I thought, okay, I don't want to be involved with that. But CAA was the number one agency in the world at the time. And I leveraged that meeting to meet with other places around town. And I did think to myself, becoming an agent is like an apprenticeship kind of tract.
Mhm. Yes.
Like you're someone's assistant and you work for them a number of years, and then they promote you to maybe junior agent and then agent. So you got to think about who's going to support you, who's going to believe in you enough. The other trap for women in positions like that is you can be too good of an assistant, right? And then that agent who's making these millions of dollars is like, I don't want her to be promoted. I
Mhm.
need
They wanna
her.
let you go.
Right. She's my work wife. I know
Right.
everything, right?
Yep.
And so here's what I figured. I thought I want to find an agency that's small enough that I know everything, right? I can learn everything and that I'm an important part of the bulwark.
Yep.
If I'm at a huge corporation, no matter how good I am, I'm replaceable.
Yep.
I'm part
Yep.
32, right? So they got to need me a little bit,
Mhm.
and a gay man. I got to work for a gay man.
That takes care of all that drama.
Yes, takes care of a lot of drama, right? So
Yeah, it's so smart.
I
So
I
you're just so
found
smart. You blow my mind. You're awesome.
So I
Continue.
found an agency, a bi-coastal boutique agency. They were, like I said, they were boutique, but they were respected and they had good clients. And I also didn't feel like I really knew a lot about film or television. In my mind, I thought, yeah, I watch television like everybody else, and I go to the movies every once in a while. But I thought agents were all like English lit majors and they'd all graduated, Harvard or something. I thought, and I was not that.
Yeah.
And but what I did have was a work ethic. I thought it'll be very hard for someone to outwork me. And I can watch films at night. I can read the entire, Western canon inside 2 years. So just let me in, put me in the game, coach, and I'll
Yeah.
deliver. So I got this job working for a gay man, owned the agency, and I was promoted within 6 months. Yeah.
Awesome. And that doesn't surprise me at all because, like you say, I bet you outworked and outshone and outlearned and outstudied everybody else and just said, yeah, right?
I
It
was
got,
driven.
yeah,
And what I also didn't realize was I put all those men on a pedestal, and it wasn't the case
right.
at all. Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy to do, right? That's what we think. These are the people who run the world. Like, wow,
Well,
I'm running the world.
that's what society tells us,
Yeah,
right? So I was just following suit.
yeah,
Um, but the lesson I think people can take from that experience, because maybe their circumstances are different, and as much as they want to work, they can't or whatever. I would say just take ownership of whatever your position is.
yeah,
Whoever your leader is in your office, they can tell the difference between the person who's coming to work, doing their job, doing a good job, going home at 5 o'clock, and that's fair,
yeah,
right?
yep,
And then there's someone who takes ownership, who's saying, you know what, our filing system doesn't really make sense. Do you mind if I come in on Saturday and I got to bring my dog, or I got to bring my kid, or
yeah,
whatever, or it'll take me 4 weeks to do it, but here's what I see for the filing system, or here's what I see for the whatever, or I'm going to take this class about X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Is there a, reimbursement program? Or like I was that person.
Yep, absolutely. How can I do this better? How can I be the best janitor I can be? How can I be the best barista?
Exactly.
How can I be the best whatever, right? Whatever shit job I have right this minute, how can I just blow the doors off this job?
Ex- Completely. And I was reading every book about the entertainment industry that I could get my hands on, and I'd realized that I'd seen more films than I thought, and more important films. In those days, we used to have video stores. I know people watching might be like, "What's a video?" There were these
Right.
stores that rented videos to us. And I live in an area that has a lot of people in the entertainment industry. So I would go to a place similar to like where Quentin Tarantino worked, and they'd have the blockbuster films, but they also had these films that nobody ever heard of, and those were the ones that were interesting to me. And you could rent those films for 99 cents. And that was interesting to me because I also didn't have a lot of money. So what I would do, I hadn't gone to film school. So I would look at the box cover, right? And it would say Raise the Red Lantern, right? And it looked kind of interesting or whatever. And so I would rent that film for 99 cents. And if I liked it, I would read the credits and, okay, who starred in it? Gong Li. I like her. Who directed it? Blah, blah, blah. He directed it. And then when I went back to the store, I would rent the next movie that person. So now I'm renting two movies. I'm getting a Gong Li movie, and I'm getting the director's movie. All
Right.
right. Did I like those two movies? And so I would do that kind of 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon thing
Yeah.
until I'd watched every movie that director had done, and every movie that actress had done. Now I'm conversant, not on the entire
Right.
spectrum of Chinese films,
Right.
but this one director and this one woman.
Yeah.
And I like them because they're good, right? So now when I go to lunch or dinner and I'm an assistant, but I'm around a bunch of agents and they're talking about whatever, I can say like, "Oh, I haven't seen such and such, but I just saw Eat Man Pray, blah 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 blah. Have you seen that?" And they're like, "Of course, Tracy. Well, I don't know. I hadn't seen it, but that cinematographer is now working with such and such, and I got right. I had a depth to
Yes.
me, and
Exactly.
that it wasn't artificial. I wasn't faking it till I made it. I I legitimately enjoyed the film and enjoyed what this person did, and was looking forward to their next thing. When I read in the trades, I didn't know every name, but when I saw those names of those people who'd done that film, that meant something.
Yeah.
And I was naive enough that when I liked someone, I would try to get in touch with them. And many times when I tried to get in touch with them, it would just be to say,
Loved your
"Oh,
film.
I liked your film.
Yeah.
I love what you did. Why did that character do such and such? Because when did that other film, you didn't, you're using a different camera. I don't know anything about cameras. I'm not a cinematographer. Oh, you're going to be in tech." It would just be like me fangirling.
Yeah.
And it was totally
Giving,
off.
not saying, "Hey, I just have 75 questions to ask you about how to be a better agent. Can you help me?" Right? You're just giving. You're just giving and then it just happens.
I was giving
Yep.
and complimenting, and it was authentic, and I was curious about what they did, and I
Yeah.
wasn't trying to sign them. I didn't want anything from them. So that was everything from going to lunch with people to just an email to or whatever. And by the time I became an agent, I had a Rolodex full of auteurs who I just liked.
Yeah.
And when I had an opportunity to begin pitching people, because I liked them and because we had a conversation and I researched them, I found out not just like, oh, I have a relationship with Quentin Tarantino, that's nice. I found out who Quentin liked. So
Yeah.
now while I'm pitching him, I can refer back to, look, I really know that you like, John Ford and blah blah. This person is going to remind you of blah blah blah. We spoke a common language,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
really, important whenever you sell anything.
Yeah, absolutely. You gotta understand what problem are they trying to solve and how can you solve it, right? How can you
Right.
get them the perfect person that's going to make their films a success?
And what's their
That's fun,
aesthetic? What turns them on?
right?
Right. And so many times they want what you have, but if you don't have their vocabulary, you're just speaking, you're not communicating.
Right, exactly. And you don't know. I mean, you probably haven't been pitched by a lot of agents, so you don't know. You might be saying the exact same thing. Oh, they're really great and they're really versatile and they've done XYZ film. No, you're not, blah blahing them with that. Let me sell you, sell you, sell you. You're saying, okay, this is what you're looking for. Okay, great. I understand what you're looking for and I can help you solve that problem. It's a whole different way of connecting with people.
Entirely different. And look, you always make the hard choice. I watched what you did with this film, that film. It would have been very easy for you to put Sylvester Stallone in that or this, but you never do that. And that's partly why you're successful and these people are so loyal to you. I have another relationship that I like you to form.
Yeah, beautiful. You're awesome. You're amazing. I really like you. I think you're a lot of fun and
Oh,
I
thank you.
respect.
I like you.
Awesome. Well, when you're next in New Jersey, you won't be too far away from me here in Boston. So let's like get lunch or something.
Done.
Awesome.
Done.
Awesome. When the weather gets into the double digits, which actually it did today, and you're thinking of coming back to the East Coast for a little while.
I really only come and New Jersey, the summer in New Jersey is hellish too. So I come back in like specific times. My family laughs about it. They like, you're a weak Californian now.
Yes.
So
But
yes,
there's
I am.
nothing, not that there's anything wrong with that.
Yes.
Cool. Um, so I guess I hope that what people are taking away from this conversation is that no matter what it is, no matter how you want to create wealth, no matter how you want to form and, you know, create your life, that you can do it if you just number one, believe in yourself. And number two, I think, right, honest with yourself about what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses. But I don't want to be the one to summarize. I want you to tell me what would you like people to walk away from this conversation, from this podcast? What kinds of things what lesson would you give your you know, you probably already gave yourself all these lessons, but if you could go back, 35 years or whatever, and say to your former self, hey, or someone who isn't as cool as your former self, maybe somebody who needs a little more help. And what kind of thing would you say to somebody just starting out? Like if say you did have a kid.
I would say, like, during this time when I was developing my career, I was painfully insecure. I didn't have a lot of confidence. I had a 4-year degree, whatever, you know. I wasn't like a stunning person or, whatever. Just realize, like, if you have a fantasy or you have a dream, you don't have to tell anybody, right? Write it down. I do write everything down. I'm a big believer in recording things,
Yeah,
right? Um, you are where you're supposed to be. Okay. Do not beat yourself up because you're not the most um, charismatic, good looking, educated, smart, all of the things. When you beat yourself up, you literally take yourself 5 steps back. Every time you can come up with something negative about yourself, I'm too fat, I'm this, they don't like black people, they blah, blah, blah. All you do is, okay, great, 5 steps back, 10 steps back. That's all you do. I say show up. Continue to show up. What's the old axiom, like 95% of success is showing up?
that's right. Absolutely true.
Show up. You showed up and you didn't ask a question? Okay. Next time, ask a question. Show up again. There's so many things that I've gotten in life because I went to the meeting. I was afraid. I thought I was stupid. But I showed up.
Yeah, yeah,
That's the big
excellent.
thing. And that life isn't about coming to the table with all your blocks. And like right now, it sounds like, oh, I was so smart and I was crafty and whatever.
I knew it.
No. Here's what happens. It's like that game that I don't know if people remember Planet of the Apes when they're trying to see how smart the apes are and they're doing these things with blocks. That is life. So you put this like this block and then you put this block and right. And when you look back, you've crafted something. Like there was a time in your life when your biggest challenge, and it did seem impossible, was learning how to tie your shoes.
True.
Like that's legitimate. There was a time when you couldn't figure out how to ride a bike. Now that seems stupid, right? You literally can do it with your eyes closed. But that's everything. All we're doing is building skill set on top of skill set, knowledge and experience, right?
Yep.
And then the other thing is about fear. I'm scared all the time. But because I write things down, because you're not going to remember all the great things that you've done, you just won't. Or and
Yeah.
you won't remember how afraid you were. You won't remember how afraid you were to like have a blind date or the this or the that. But if you have friends that can remind you, or you have a diary, or you have anything like that, you realize that you are a pretty brave person because you walk through the fear. And when you walk through the fear, you don't have to do it heroically. Like I said, when I bought that first building, I literally thought to myself, I don't know what I'm doing. And who the hell do I think I am? I read a few books in Barnes and Nobles and I think I can buy an apartment building. What's the worst? If I screw it up, they'll take it from me and I'll buy another one or I'll sell it or what and I'll do it again. You can go into a space with that kind of negative attitude, but do it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That's it. It's fail
So
forward.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, in life, again, especially if you're a woman, men usually get hired for what people believe they can do, and women get hired for what they've done.
That's
And
so true.
so it takes, we got to do more,
Yeah.
right? And I'm black. And in an industry where people are overtly racist.
Yeah.
So you got to do a lot of things. You got to build a big brick wall to be successful and have fun doing it. And no, be conscious of like, I'm not where I want to be, and I'm this and I'm that, but I'm showing up and I'm building my skill set. And every time I get another skill, learn to talk to people, whatever, I make myself more capable and more of a threat.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because I've done some weird things too, or not weird things, but I've done some things that people perhaps thought weren't that whatever cool, acceptable, or maybe even just possible. And people say, aren't you afraid? And like, okay, I'm a little bit afraid of this, but you know what I'm petrified of is like laying in bed dying and thinking, wow, I really wish I would have done something. Right? I've like FOMO is way worse to me than
You are really smart. You are really smart. My grandmother, I had one of the blessings that I did have is I was very close to my grandmother and she lived until 102 and totally had her mind and everything.
yeah,
And she would tell me things like that. She'd say, do everything that you want to do while you're a young woman because when you get older, you got to wait for people to take you here and you got to they tell you whether you can still drive or not. You don't
right.
get to decide. And she all of these things. So my FOMO, I never wanted to be mediocre. I did not want a life of mediocrity. I ran from that. So I remember a girlfriend was going to go to Haiti. She's Haitian. She's been to Haiti many times, but you hear horrible things about Haiti. I said, I'm going. I'm going with you.
Yep.
You know, Cuba, I'm going with you. I always wanted to find the what if. I wanted to live a big life. So you can't do that. You cannot live a big life in front of your television. You got to, right? You got to put on your sneakers and go out into the world.
Put on your big girl pants and get
You
the heck
got
out of
right.
there.
I am a big girl. I'm a big black woman, and I grew up liking rock and roll, and I was a groupie. And nothing in anything I've ever seen, read, experienced said you belong on tour with Metallica. You belong on tour with Guns N' Roses. But I decided that that's what was going to happen because I wanted that experience, right? So I was afraid. I was afraid. Like, how am I going to get on the plane or the tour bus or like, I like a band where, the lead singer is using the N word. I like, what if he says that to me? What do I do? You know what? I'm going to get to find out because I'm getting on the tour bus.
And if the answer is what's if the worst thing that could happen is you get a killer story out of it, it's worth doing.
Right? Free beer for the rest of my life telling a Guns N' Roses story.
Awesome. Awesome. I
But
love
you
it.
gotta, like, I'm not gonna have the story if I stay home.
That's right. Exactly. And I'm sure I don't, you probably travel in better circles than I do, but I have, oops, I have literally been at a meal with people who I guess you could say were sort of friends, and they're talking about like what happened on The Bachelor. And I'm like, I don't even know what that is. Like, what the hell are you people talking? Like, on a different planet here, right? I have no idea what you are all going on about, you know? And it's like, it's real. And I thought, don't you want to have any of your own experiences? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, yeah,
Yeah, you and I, we're simpatico.
we
I'm the
are.
same. I'm the same way. Like, I don't want to talk about what's happening on The Bachelor. I want to sell The Bachelor.
Right? Exactly. I want to, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, I want to be on The
Cool.
Bachelor or watch it.
Right. Awesome. Okay. Well, obviously, we could talk all day. So let's wrap up the podcast and thank everybody. First of all, thank you for being here, being real, being open, being awesome. And I know being inspirational to everybody who's listening. And thank you, listeners, for listening. Now, I bet there's like 300 people who you know would really love to hear this conversation. So forward this episode to them. They're going to thank
Absolutely.
you. We're going to thank you. And the big, if you didn't get it, the big thing is, the big lesson is just do it, right? Like, okay, we're going to do a
Yes.
little Nike spinoff. Just freaking put on your big girl pants, get out of the house, and just do it.
First of all, thank you for choosing me. This is an amazing platform. Um, and you give people hope, right? Like, you guys have heard some fun things about me, but I am from the projects of Newark, New Jersey. I did not start off, I did not have auspicious beginnings. The
No silver
people,
spoons.
no silver spoon. The people around me were, my parents did their best, but I know lots of people who had kids before 16 and, became all, I know all of that. And I know people who make a lot more money than me, who came from had different roadmap. But what I'll say is if you have a goal, because the first thing is getting a goal, right? If you have a goal, you have a blessing, and the universe bows to greet you. Everyone, I know it doesn't feel like it, everybody's rooting for you. So just take a step. You take one step, and the universe will take a step towards you. This stuff is not always easy, but it's easier than staying broke.
Yep. That's absolutely true. Absolutely true. Awesome. So, is it appropriate for me to say, like, how can people reach you or how should they connect
Sure.
with you?
So if they're interested in my clothing line, which is beautiful,
I
they
don't
can,
doubt it for a second.
thank you, thank you. They can find us at santegrace.com or on IG. Feel free to DM me. Actually, if they mention your podcast, I'll give them a little bit of a discount.
Oh, nice. Thank you.
Yeah. And if you are talent, okay, you can contact me.
If you want to be on the casting couch.
If you want to be on the casting couch, Uh, okay, so my agency, we really only look at people who already have a resume. But if you want to contact me, you can reach me at info@tcamgmt.com.
Cool. Awesome. Tracy, you're awesome. Have a fantastic, beautiful, amazing day. And
Thank
thank you
you.
for blessing my stage.